Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for your service to our beautiful nation. I support this mission that HUD has. I believe in safety nets. I believe it's a noble mission. But I'm a numbers guy, and as an appropriator, especially right now, where our nation is seeing record inflation, 8.5%, and a debt of $30 trillion at the federal level. We've got to pay attention to these numbers a little closer than we have maybe historically. And I think you're operating woefully inefficiently right now as an agency. $61 billion, rounding up, $60.8 billion would be sufficient if you assume 500,000 homeless people in our country right now, which is a rough estimate, plus or minus. That 61 billion is enough to give every homeless person in our nation $122,000 every year, each and every year. The average rent right now in our nation is about $1,100, maybe $1,200 right now per month. So when you spread that $122,000, you're actually paying for about 110 months of rent for every homeless person each and every year within your specific budget. These numbers don't make sense, and I think you're not getting all of the power to the ground, the power of the American taxpayer dollar to the ground in these neighborhoods where we need to be making the investments that you described. I agree with everything that you said, but you're not getting the power to the ground. Another way to look at it is if the average home price right now is $300,000 nationwide, that monthly payment to include not only the mortgage, but also taxes and insurance comes out to about $1,700 a month, which with your budget, we can actually fully pay the mortgage for an entire year for 3 million families. So when we talk about staffing and when we talk about efficiencies within our federal agencies, this is one of those agencies, unfortunately, that stands out as not necessarily getting the taxpayer dollars to the customers, in this case, the families that need housing assistance at the levels that you should, frankly. What is your current staff? You talked about your staffing challenges and the ramp down. What is your current staff at right now?
Let me just thank you so much for your question, Mr. Garcia. Let me just say to you that we serve more than 500,000 people. We serve more than a homeless population.
How many do you serve, Madam Secretary? How many get served?
5 million people. We serve almost 5 million people.
5 million?
Yes. And if there's something that you have specifically that you think we are not doing, I am certainly.
No, I don't think it's a lack of what you're doing. I think you're doing it inefficiently. Even at 5 million, you're still putting about $12,000 per year to each of these 5 million people, which is, again, enough to pay for their entire rent for an entire year. That's each and every year, by the way. So even if you're servicing 5 million, I'm not saying we don't service 5 million. We should service everyone that needs the money, but let's service them and not necessarily bureaucrats who are making more money off of these programs in Washington, D.C. than the people who are benefiting from these programs.
Mr. Garcia, if you have something specific, I certainly do. I'm willing to listen to it. I mean, but you're talking in generalities.
Well, it goes to my question, I guess.
We are not
specifically, I'm actually not talking in generalities. I'm being very specific, Madam Secretary, not to argue with you, but I'm asking you how many people work for your agency right now?
7,500.
7,500. So you're asking for a 10% increase. And so what I would submit to you is that we need fewer bureaucrats in the agency and maybe more focus on how do we get this money to the neighborhoods and to the people who need the assistance rather than people in your agency. What's the average salary of a HUD worker right now?
Oh, I have no idea.
I'd like to see that. I'm doing this in the vein of hopefully bringing solutions to the table because this is a lot of money. This is aggravating our nation's debt. This budget is in the hole, a 13% increase, I believe, year over year, while we're operating in this extremely high inflation rate. This inflation actually hurts the poor, as you know, more than anyone. This is the equivalent of adding another month of rent to low-income family households. And so in the interest of getting that money there, I think you need a task force to go look at how you maximize our taxpayer dollars, increase efficiencies, and get this money to the people that need it rather than to the bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. I know that's a tall order, and that's a massive endeavor, but we've got to figure out how to get your money to the ground in the areas that need it.
No, I'm
Mr.
happy
Chairman,
to
I'm
do
out
it,
of
but I
time.
would say this to you, sir. Money on the ground is getting housing vouchers to VA people, veterans who are sleeping on the streets. Money on the ground is taking care of making sure we get these encampments off the streets. Money on the ground is making sure that people in public housing live decent. Money on the ground is choice neighborhoods that we talked about. We get money on the ground. That's why I'm saying specifically,
only
if
about
there's
15%
something
of
we're
that gets to
missing,
the ground,
tell
Madam
me what
Secretary.
that
That's all I'm
is.
saying. It's woefully inefficient, and we can do better.
Oh,
Ms.
thank
Watson
you.
Coleman.